Hello from my garden. I'm going to discuss weeds today because weeds are so appropriate to our judgment of things and how we are very good as human beings judging what's good and what's bad and what isn't. And yet weeds, as in plants and flowers, all have a place in this world and all have a place in our garden, just as we as people all have a place and are here for a reason. I can always relate the garden and nature to humanity. There's always a link, there's always a definition. If you're a gardener, weeds can be so annoying and they can wreck your garden. And yet all weeds, or most weeds, have wonderful, wonderful properties. They all have, many of them have healing properties. This is a weed. It's all over the place. It grows through the cracks, it grows in the garden in between all my flowers. And it is a bit of a nuisance, but it also gets a very pretty pink flower on it. So the bees love that, the pollinators love that, so it's still doing good. What is a definition of a weed? It's a plant that is out of place. It's not intentionally sown, okay? It's a plant growing where it's not wanted. A plant whose virtues may not yet have been discovered, but very annoying. I relate that to people because very often we say people are in the way, or they just don't adapt to society, or they shouldn't be where they are. So we can relate people and weeds together. Maybe doesn't sound very nice, but there's always a correlation because it's just a judgment. Weeds are doing something that we don't want them to do in the garden, or people that we don't like, maybe they're just doing what you don't want them to do. They think they're doing fine. So you see how we judge and we can relate to things. Many weeds have wonderful properties, and I'm going to talk about that in different episodes on my channel. Maybe they have negative impact in some places, but it's our thoughts that have negative impacts too. So when we start judging people and places and things, that's very negative to us. So we have to look at the whole thing holistically. Weeds actually provide really good benefits. Soil stabilization, they make habitat that's very good for wildlife, and nectar for bees, and that's what I was showing you. These have beautiful flowers and the nectar in there for the bees is really good. And another weed that is prominent that everybody sees but bees absolutely love is dandelion. Now I'm going to talk about dandelion in another session because of the benefits. So they all have a place in society, in the garden, in the planet. They add organic matter to the soil, so that makes the soil more nutritious, although it can take nutrition from some of the plants or the vegetables and things that the farmers are growing en masse. It can hold the ground in flooding, so a lot of the ground is not washed away. Very many of them have really good health benefits, very good for human consumption, good for employment because people can be employed to pick weeds, use weeds for the medical benefits, the health benefits, and for the other things that they do. So they're not always bad. They just have a controversial nature. And we as humans are so good at judging people as we judge plants and flowers and weeds, and saying what is a weed, and yet everything has a place on this planet. Everything that's here has a place, whether it's to learn a lesson, to have a health benefit, to make us keep changing and to be aware. And I think very often we judge them just because we don't like them or because they look messy. And just as we judge people, we don't like them because they're not dressed how we want them to dress, or they're not doing what we want them to do or what is expected. They don't conform to society or the general idea of how people should act. So therefore, weeds are not doing exactly what we want them to do or the farmers want them to do. But there's two ways of looking at everything, and judging is a human trait that we're all guilty of. But I love many weeds, and I don't tend to pick anything or pull anything up if it's got a flower on, because that's a flower for the bees and it's nectar, and I watch and I learn, but I also see how they give you hope. Weeds can give you hope. You see a weed growing out of the flagstones, out of cracks in walls, out of concrete. They are always looking for the light, and they will get through anything, and that's a weed. So how can that be totally negative? It's not. It can give us hope, because that is strong enough to grow and go up to the light, always looking for the light. And we as human beings are always looking for the good. And if we look and watch weeds and plants in the garden, we can learn as well. I love sitting here in my garden, and I hope you can feel the peace of my garden coming through to you on this rather wintry summer day. Thank you for listening, and I really look forward to talking to you again soon and sharing some of my knowledge. Enjoy your day, enjoy your garden, and go look at the weeds.